I stared at the email on my screen for the third time, my coffee growing cold as the words "effective immediately" burned into my retinas. After 17 years of building Harrison & Associates from a small accounting firm into a regional powerhouse, my boss, Richard Harrison, had just informed me via email that my services were no longer required due to restructuring. 17 years. I'd started as a junior associate fresh out of college, working 14-hour days to prove myself. I'd brought in clients, mentored new hires, and sacrificed weekends and holidays to meet deadlines. I'd even worked through my mother's funeral because Richard said the Morrison Industries audit couldn't wait. And now, at 41 years old, I was being dismissed like an intern who'd made too many coffee runs. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was sitting in the office I'd helped design during our expansion 5 years ago, surrounded by awards for client service excellence, while reading about my termination on the same laptop the company had given me for my 10-year anniversary. My nameplate still read Director of Client Relations, but apparently that title meant nothing when the quarterly numbers started looking tight. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. I remembered my first day at Harrison & Associates, nervous and eager in my cheapest suit, clutching a briefcase my father had given me as a graduation gift. The firm had only 8 employees then, crammed into a converted house downtown with creaky floors and unreliable air conditioning. Richard had been different then. Younger, hungrier, more willing to take risks and treat employees like partners rather than expenses. We'd grown together, Richard and I. When he'd needed someone to handle the Morrison Industries pitch, I'd spent 3 weeks preparing a presentation that won us our biggest client. When the state auditing board had questioned our procedures, I'd worked nights and weekends to implement new quality control systems that became the industry standard. When we'd expanded to our current offices, I'd been the one managing the transition while keeping all our clients happy. But somewhere along the way, Richard had changed. Maybe it was the stress of running a larger firm, or the pressure from his investors, or just the natural evolution of a man who'd achieved success and wanted to protect it. The collaborative decision-making had given way to top-down mandates. The family atmosphere had been replaced by corporate hierarchy. The personal relationships with clients had been sacrificed for efficiency and scalability. I'd seen it happening, but had convinced myself it was temporary, that we'd find our way back to the values that had made us successful. I'd been loyal to a fault, turning down offers from competitors, declining opportunities to start my own practice, believing that my commitment to Harrison & Associates would be rewarded with security and respect. How wrong I'd been. I picked up my phone and called my wife Jessica. She answered on the second ring, probably expecting me to tell her I'd be home late again. "David, you're calling early. Everything okay?" "They fired me, Jess. After 17 years, Richard fired me via email." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Finally she spoke, her voice carefully controlled in that way she had when she was furious, but trying not to show it. "What reason did they give?" "Restructuring, budget cuts, the usual corporate speak for 'we found someone younger and cheaper.'" "David, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Do you want me to come pick you up?" I looked around my office. At the client photos on my desk, the industry certifications on my wall, the small putting green I'd installed to take breaks between long audit sessions. "No, I'm fine. I need to clean out my desk and handle a few things." Jessica was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her thinking. She'd been my anchor through 17 years of long hours and client emergencies, the one who'd kept our family together while I'd built my career. She knew better than anyone how much this job had meant to me, how much of my identity had been wrapped up in being Harrison's top performer. "David, are you really okay? I know how much this place meant to you." "I thought it did," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. But sitting here now, reading this email, I'm realizing that maybe I've been holding on to something that didn't exist anymore. The firm I loved, the partnership I thought I had with Richard, maybe that's been gone for years, and I was just too stubborn to see it. What do you mean? I mean, maybe this is the push I needed to finally do what I should have done years ago. Start my own practice. Work with clients who value what I bring to the table. Build something that reflects my values instead of someone else's bottom line. After Jessica hung up, promising to have my favorite scotch waiting at home, I sat in my chair and let the reality sink in. 17 years of loyalty, of putting Harrison and Associates before everything else. And this was how it ended. No meeting, no explanation, just a sterile email sent while I was having lunch. But as the initial shock wore off, something else began building in my chest. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that, but a cold, calculating determination that reminded me why I'd been so successful in the first place. Richard had made a mistake, a big one. He'd assumed that the relationships I'd built belonged to the firm, that clients would stay because of the Harrison and Associates name rather than the personal service they'd received. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I opened my laptop and began scrolling through my client files, mentally cataloging 17 years of relationship building and trust earning. Harrison and Associates had grown from that 8-person firm to over 40 employees, and I'd been responsible for bringing in roughly 60% of our current business. But one client stood out above all others: Morrison Industries, a manufacturing company that had been with us for 12 years and generated nearly 40% of our annual revenue. I'd landed Morrison when they were a mid-sized company looking to switch from their previous accounting firm after a dispute over billing practices. Tom Morrison, the CEO, had been skeptical about working with a smaller firm, but I'd spent months building his trust, proving that we could provide the personal attention his company deserved while maintaining the technical expertise they needed. The courtship had been intense and personal. I'd visited their facilities, learned their business inside and out, attended their company picnics, and even helped Tom's son with college applications. Over the years, Morrison Industries had grown exponentially, expanding from 3 facilities to 15 across the Midwest. I'd helped them through acquisitions, restructuring, IPO preparation, and countless audits. Tom and I had developed not just a professional relationship, but a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared values about business ethics and loyalty. The beauty of my situation was that I held Morrison's complete trust. Every major financial decision went through me. I attended their board meetings, helped develop their expansion strategies, and had access to information that would take any new accounting firm months to understand. More importantly, my contract with Harrison and Associates contained a standard non-compete clause that prevented me from working for direct competitors for 1 year. But it said nothing about taking clients with me if I started my own firm. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Tom Morrison's direct cell phone number. It was 3:30 in the afternoon, and I knew he'd be in his office, probably reviewing the quarterly reports I'd helped prepare last week. "David, good to hear from you. How are things at Harrison?" "Actually, Tom, that's why I'm calling. I need to tell you something important, and I'd rather you hear it from me directly." I explained the situation, the email termination, the lack of explanation, the complete disregard for 17 years of service. Tom's reaction was immediate and predictable. "They fired you right before our year-end audit? David, you've been our primary contact for over a decade. You know more about our business than half my executives." "I know, and I'm sorry for the timing, but I wanted to give you a heads up because I'm sure Harrison will be reaching out to assure you that the transition will be seamless." Transition? Tom's voice had taken on the edge I recognized from board meetings when he was displeased. "David, you are Morrison Industries' relationship with Harrison. There is no transition. If you're not there, we have no reason to stay." This was exactly what I'd hoped to hear, but I played it carefully. "Tom, I appreciate that, but you have to do what's best for Morrison. I don't want my situation to disrupt your business." Let me ask you something, David. What are your plans? Are you joining another firm? I'm considering starting my own practice. I've got the experience, the certifications, and I think I can provide the kind of personalized service that larger firms are moving away from. When? When what? When are you starting your own firm? Because Morrison Industries wants to be your first client. I felt a surge of satisfaction that was better than any scotch Jessica could pour. Tom, are you sure? This would be a significant change for Morrison. David, you've been handling our account for 12 years. You know our business better than anyone outside our company. The idea of starting over with some new team at Harrison, who'll need months just to understand our basic structure, that's not happening. Draw up a proposal and get it to me by Friday. We'll make this transition as smooth as possible. After hanging up with Tom, I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time since reading Richard's email. Morrison Industries represented roughly $800,000 in annual billings for Harrison and Associates. Losing them wouldn't just hurt financially, it would send a message to other clients about the firm's stability and competence. But I wasn't done. I opened my contact list and began making calls to other clients I'd developed relationships with over the years. Each conversation was a testament to the relationships I'd built, the trust I'd earned, and the value I'd provided over nearly 2 decades. Meridian Construction was my next call. I'd helped them grow from a small residential contractor to a commercial developer handling multi-million-dollar projects. The owner, Steve Meridian, had been one of my first clients when I was still a junior associate, and we'd grown our careers together. When I explained my situation, his response was swift and decisive. David, you've been more than our accountant. You've been our business advisor, our strategic planner, and our friend. If you're starting your own firm, Meridian Construction will be there with you from day one. Lakeside Medical Group had been with us for 8 years, ever since I'd helped them navigate the complex financial requirements of setting up their multi-physician practice. Dr. Sarah Chen, the practice manager, had become a trusted colleague who often referred other medical professionals to our firm. Her reaction to my news was immediate anger, not at me, but at Harrison. They fired you via email? After everything you've done for that firm? David, that's unconscionable. You know we'll follow you wherever you go. The idea of working with some stranger who doesn't understand our industry is unthinkable. Thompson & Sons Manufacturing was a family business that had trusted me with 3 generations of their financial planning. Old Mr. Thompson had retired 5 years ago, passing the business to his son Mark, but I'd maintained relationships with the entire family. When I called Mark with my news, he was equally supportive. My father always said you were the most honest accountant he'd ever worked with, Mark told me. If you're starting your own firm, you can count on Thompson & Sons. We believe in loyalty, and we remember who stood by us during the tough times. By 5 p.m., I had verbal commitments from clients representing over $1.2 million in annual billings, nearly half of my total book of business. More importantly, these were long-term, stable clients who generated consistent revenue and had minimal collection issues. They were exactly the foundation I'd need to build a successful independent practice. But I wasn't finished. I began thinking about other professionals who might be ready to make a change, people who shared my values about client service and business ethics. Jennifer Wong, a junior associate who'd been working primarily on accounts I managed, had expressed frustration with Harrison's increasingly corporate culture. She was talented, ambitious, and had already built strong relationships with several clients. I called Jennifer's cell phone, knowing she often worked late. David, I was just thinking about you. I heard some rumors about restructuring. Is everything okay? Actually, Jennifer, I need to talk to you about something. Are you free for coffee tomorrow morning? Early, before work? Of course. Is this about the restructuring rumors? Among other things. Let's meet at that cafe on 5th Street at 7 a.m. There's something I want to discuss with you. Michael Torres was another junior associate I'd been mentoring for the past 2 years. He'd come to Harrison straight from his master's program, full of energy and fresh ideas that were often dismissed by senior management. I'd seen his potential and had been advocating for his advancement, but the firm's rigid hierarchy made it difficult for young professionals to advance quickly. I reached Michael just as he was leaving the office. "Michael, do you have a few minutes to talk? I have a proposition that might interest you." "Sure, David. What's going on?" "I'm starting my own firm and I'm looking for talented people who want to build something special. Are you interested in hearing more?" The excitement in his voice was palpable. "Are you serious? When? How? Yes, I'm definitely interested in hearing more." "Let's meet for breakfast tomorrow. I'll explain everything then." Richard hadn't returned from his afternoon meetings, so I began the process of cleaning out my office. 17 years of accumulated professional life fit into 3 boxes, an oddly anticlimactic end to what had been the defining chapter of my career. I left a brief note on Richard's desk, along with my company laptop, phone, and keycard. The note was professional and courteous, thanking him for the opportunities I'd had at Harrison & Associates and wishing the firm success in the future. I didn't mention the clients who'd be leaving with me. He'd find out about that soon enough. As I carried my boxes to my car, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Harrison's quarterly numbers or corporate politics or bureaucratic procedures. I was thinking about the future, my future, and the possibilities that lay ahead. That evening, Jessica and I sat on our back porch, sharing that promised scotch and planning my next move. She'd been surprisingly calm about the whole situation, more excited than worried about the prospect of me starting my own firm. "You've been talking about going independent for years," she reminded me. "Maybe this is the universe giving you the push you needed." "The universe has a cruel sense of humor then. But you're right. I've been comfortable at Harrison for too long. Getting fired might be the best thing that could have happened to me. What do you need to make this work?" I'd been thinking about that all afternoon. Office space, which we can probably manage from home initially. Professional liability insurance, which I can get through the state CPA association. Basic office equipment and software. Most importantly, I need to file the incorporation paperwork and get my business licenses sorted out. What about startup costs? We've got enough in savings to cover 6 months of expenses, and with the clients I've already lined up, I should be generating revenue within 30 days. The biggest challenge will be handling the workload myself until I can afford to hire help. Jessica raised her glass. "To David Matthews, CPA and proprietor of, what are you going to call it?" I'd been considering that question during the drive home. Matthews Financial Services, simple, professional, and it puts my name front and center where clients can find me. To Matthews Financial Services, then. May it be everything Harrison & Associates never was. We talked late into the night about the practical aspects of starting a business, the legal requirements, the financial planning, the marketing strategy. But more than that, we talked about the kind of firm I wanted to build, the values I wanted to embody, and the legacy I wanted to create. "I want to build a place where talented people can grow and succeed," I told Jessica, "where clients are treated like partners, not just revenue sources, where we do excellent work because we care about our clients' success, not just our own profits." "That sounds like the David I married," she said. "The one who used to come home excited about helping clients solve problems and achieve their goals." She was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost that excitement, that sense of purpose that had originally drawn me to accounting. I'd become focused on internal politics and corporate advancement rather than the work itself. Starting my own firm would be a chance to rediscover what I loved about my profession. The next morning, I was up at 5:00 a.m., outlining business plans and researching office space options. By 8:00 a.m., I was at the courthouse filing incorporation paperwork. By 10 a.m., I had appointments scheduled with 3 different commercial real estate agents. My breakfast meetings with Jennifer and Michael were equally productive. Both were enthusiastic about joining my new firm, attracted by the opportunity to take on greater responsibilities and work directly with clients. Jennifer had been frustrated by Harrison's bureaucratic structure, which limited her ability to develop client relationships. Michael was eager to escape the rigid hierarchy that prevented junior associates from contributing meaningfully to strategic decisions. "I've learned more working with you in 2 years than I did in my entire master's program," Michael told me over coffee. "The idea of continuing that relationship in a firm where I can actually make a difference is incredibly appealing." Jennifer was equally enthusiastic. "I've been thinking about leaving Harrison for months. The culture has become so impersonal, so focused on billable hours rather than client service. What you're describing sounds like the kind of firm I want to be part of." And by the end of our meetings, I had committed to offering both Jennifer and Michael positions in my new firm, with equity stakes that would make them partners in our success rather than just employees. My phone started ringing around 11:02 a.m., Richard Harrison calling from his office line. "David, we need to talk. Can you come in this afternoon?" "I don't think that's necessary, Richard. I left my company property on your desk along with a note. My departure should be pretty straightforward. It's about Morrison Industries. Tom Morrison called this morning and said they're terminating their contract with us. He mentioned that you're starting your own firm and that they're planning to follow you." There it was. I'd been wondering how long it would take for Richard to connect the dots. Tom called me yesterday to discuss the transition. I told him he should do whatever was best for Morrison's needs. "David, you know you have a non-compete agreement. You can't solicit our clients." "I'm not soliciting anyone, Richard. I'm starting an independent practice, and former clients are welcome to choose their own representation. The non-compete clause prevents me from working for competitors, not from starting my own business. That's not how this works, and you know it. Morrison Industries has been our client for 12 years, and I've been their primary contact for all 12 of those years. I built that relationship through personal service and professional competence. If they choose to follow me, that's their decision, not mine." There was a long pause before Richard spoke again, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "This is going to destroy you, David. You think you can just walk away after 17 years and take our clients with you? I'll make sure every firm in the city knows what kind of person you really are. Richard, you fired me via email after 17 years of loyal service. You made this choice, not me." "I'm simply responding to the situation you created." The conversation ended badly, with Richard making vague threats about legal action and professional retaliation. But I wasn't intimidated. I'd been careful to respect my legal obligations, and I had documentation of everything I'd done. I immediately called my attorney, Sarah Chen, who'd handled my personal legal matters for several years. I needed to make sure my position was legally sound and that I was protected against any potential retaliation from Harrison and Associates. "David, based on what you've told me, you're in a strong position," Sarah said after reviewing my employment contract. "The non-compete clause is narrowly written and doesn't restrict independent practice. As long as you're not actively soliciting Harrison's clients or using proprietary information, you should be fine." What about the client lists and contact information? I've got 12 years of relationships with these people. That's where it gets tricky. You can't use Harrison's client database or any proprietary information you gained while employed there. But contact information that's publicly available, relationships you built through your own efforts, and knowledge you gained through your professional experience, that's fair game. And if Richard tries to interfere with my business or spread false information about me, then we'll have grounds for a defamation suit. Document everything, keep copies of all communications, and let me know if he crosses any lines. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, planning, and phone calls. I found a small office suite in a professional building downtown, signed a 1-year lease, and began setting up Matthews Financial Services. The space was modest, just 2 offices, a conference room, and a reception area, but it was mine. The office building was perfect for my needs. It was located in the heart of the business district, easily accessible for clients, and surrounded by the kind of professional services that often referred business to accounting firms. The building manager, an older gentleman named Frank, who'd been in commercial real estate for 30 years, was helpful and encouraging. "Starting your own firm takes guts," he told me as we walked through the space. "But if you're half as dedicated as you seem, you'll do fine. I've seen a lot of businesses come and go in this building, and the ones that succeed are the ones that focus on serving their clients rather than just making money." The office setup was surprisingly complex. I needed furniture, computers, phones, internet service, a copy machine, filing systems, and dozens of other items I'd taken for granted at Harrison. But each purchase was an investment in my future, and I found myself enjoying the process of creating a workspace that reflected my values and priorities. More importantly, clients were calling daily to confirm their transition to my new firm. Morrison Industries made it official with a signed contract worth $850,000 annually. Meridian Construction followed with a $200,000 agreement. Lakeside Medical Group committed to $150,000. Thompson & Sons Manufacturing signed for $180,000. By the end of my first month in business, I had signed contracts worth over $1.3 million in annual revenue. The satisfaction was incredible, but it wasn't just about the money. These clients had chosen to follow me because of the relationships I'd built and the service I'd provided. They trusted me enough to take a risk on a brand new firm, and that trust was worth more than any paycheck Harrison and Associates had ever given me. Jennifer and Michael started on the same day, 3 weeks after I'd opened the firm. Both had given Harrison proper notice, despite Richard's attempts to convince them to stay. Their first day was a celebration of sorts. We had lunch at a nice restaurant downtown, toured the office, and began planning how we'd handle our growing client base. "This feels like the beginning of something special," Jennifer said, as we reviewed client files and discussed work assignments. "I've never been part of a startup before, but the energy here is incredible." Michael was equally enthusiastic. "I love that we can actually talk to clients, make decisions, and implement solutions without getting approval from 3 different committees. This feels like what accounting should be." Both Jennifer and Michael brought more than just technical skills to the firm. They brought fresh perspectives, innovative ideas, and a hunger for success that reminded me of my own early career. Working with them made me realize how much I'd missed the collaborative energy that had made Harrison successful in the early years. Jessica had been my unofficial business manager during the startup phase, helping with everything from office decorating to client communications. She'd taken a leave of absence from her own job to help get Matthews Financial Services off the ground, and her business background was invaluable in setting up our operational systems. One evening, about 6 weeks after opening, she handed me a glass of wine and a folder full of paperwork. "Congratulations, Mr. Successful Business Owner. You officially have more revenue in your first quarter than most small firms generate in their first year. It's been crazy, but good crazy. I'm actually excited about work again, in a way I haven't been for years. What's next? You can't keep handling all of this alone." She was right. Even with Jennifer and Michael's help, I was working 12-hour days and turning down potential new clients because we simply didn't have the capacity. "I need to hire more help, another associate, maybe a part-time administrator, and we need to start thinking about expanding the office space." The growth was almost overwhelming. Word was spreading through the local business community about my new firm, partly through client referrals, but also through industry connections I'd built over nearly 2 decades. Other firms were referring overflow work to us, and we were landing new clients almost weekly. The referrals were coming from unexpected sources. Dr. Chen from Lakeside Medical Group had recommended us to 2 other physician practices. Tom Morrison had introduced us to 3 companies in his industry association. Steve Meridian had connected us with several other contractors and developers. It was a network effect that I'd never experienced at Harrison, where client relationships were often viewed as proprietary assets rather than natural sources of business growth. One particularly satisfying referral came from an unexpected source. Patricia Williams, a former Harrison client who'd left the firm 2 years earlier due to poor service, called me directly. "David, I heard through the grapevine that you've started your own firm. I've been looking for a new accountant since I left Harrison, and several people have recommended you. Can we set up a meeting?" Patricia's company, Williams Marketing Solutions, was a mid-sized agency that specialized in digital marketing for small businesses. She'd left Harrison after a series of problems with her account management, including missed deadlines, billing errors, and lack of responsiveness to her concerns. "I tried to work with Harrison for 3 years, she told me during our initial meeting, but I never felt like they understood my business or cared about my success. I was just another billable hour to them." Her experience was unfortunately typical of what I'd been hearing from other former Harrison clients. The firm's growth had come at the expense of the personal service that had originally made them successful. Clients were being assigned to junior associates who had no experience in their industries, and senior partners were too busy with administrative duties to maintain meaningful relationships. I signed Williams Marketing Solutions as a client, and Patricia became one of my most vocal advocates in the business community. She referred 4 other clients to us within 6 months, and her testimonials about our service quality were invaluable in building our reputation. 6 months after opening, we were operating at capacity again. I'd expanded the office lease to include 2 additional suites, hired a full-time administrator named Carol and a second junior associate named Alex, and was considering bringing on a partner-level CPA to handle our growing audit practice. Carol was a godsend, an experienced office manager who'd worked for several professional service firms and understood the unique challenges of running an accounting practice. She took over the administrative burden that had been consuming too much of my time, allowing me to focus on client service and business development. Alex was a recent graduate who reminded me of myself at that age, eager, ambitious, and willing to work hard to prove himself. I made sure to give him meaningful responsibilities and direct client contact from the beginning, remembering how frustrating it had been to spend years doing routine work without understanding the bigger picture. The most satisfying moment came on a Tuesday morning in late spring, when I was reviewing quarterly reports and noticed something interesting in the industry newsletter. Harrison and Associates had lost 3 more major clients in the past month, including 2 that I hadn't contacted but who'd apparently been unhappy with the firm's service quality. More tellingly, they were advertising for a Director of Client Relations position, my old job, offering a salary that was 30% higher than what they'd been paying me. The job description was almost identical to what I'd been doing, with additional requirements that suggested they were struggling to replace the client relationships I'd taken with me. I called Tom Morrison that afternoon, partly for our regular check-in, but mostly because I was curious about the market rumors I'd been hearing. "David, I'm glad you called. I've been meaning to tell you something. Richard Harrison reached out to me last month, trying to convince Morrison Industries to return to their firm." "Really? What was his pitch?" "Better pricing, expanded services, dedicated account management, all the things you were already providing us. But here's the interesting part. He admitted that losing Morrison Industries had been a wake-up call about client service quality." "And your response?" Tom's laugh was audible through the phone. "I told him that if he'd valued client service quality, he wouldn't have fired the best client relations manager in the city via email. Then I hung up. The conversation reinforced something I'd been thinking about for months, that Richard's decision to fire me had been driven by short-term financial pressure rather than strategic thinking. He'd seen my salary as an expense to be cut, rather than an investment in client relationships. Now he was learning the hard way that replacing those relationships was far more expensive than maintaining them. But I didn't take any pleasure in Harrison's struggles. I'd spent 17 years of my life building that firm, and seeing it decline was like watching a family member destroy themselves through poor choices. I hoped Richard would find a way to turn things around, both for the sake of his remaining employees and for the clients who deserved better service. The first anniversary of Matthews Financial Services was approaching, and I wanted to do something special to mark the milestone. We'd grown to 15 employees and were handling over $2 million in annual billings. We'd moved to a larger office building, expanded our service offerings to include financial planning and business consulting, and were being recognized as one of the fastest-growing firms in the region. Jessica suggested we host a client appreciation event, something that would celebrate our relationships while also showcasing our growth and capabilities. We rented space at one of the city's premier hotels, hired a caterer, and invited all of our clients along with their spouses and key employees. The event was a huge success. Over 150 people attended, including clients, referral sources, and other professionals in our network. The atmosphere was warm and collegial, very different from the formal corporate events I'd attended while at Harrison. People were genuinely excited to be there, to celebrate what we'd built together. Tom Morrison gave an impromptu speech that brought tears to my eyes. A year ago, David Matthews took a leap of faith and started his own firm. But he didn't do it alone. He did it with us, his clients, as partners. He didn't just ask for our business. He earned it through years of exceptional service and personal commitment. Matthews Financial Services represents everything that's right about professional service, competence, integrity, and genuine care for client success. The applause was thunderous, and I realized that this was what I'd been working toward all along. Not just a successful business, but a community of professionals who supported each other and shared common values. As the evening wound down, I found myself in conversation with several other business owners who were interested in our growth story. One of them, the owner of a successful manufacturing company, made a comment that stuck with me. "You know what's impressive about what you've built here? It's not just the financial success, though that's obviously important. It's the relationships. You can see it in how your clients talk about you, how your employees interact with each other, how everyone seems genuinely happy to be part of this organization. That's rare in professional services." He was right. We'd built something special, not just a profitable business, but a workplace where people enjoyed coming to work, where clients felt valued and understood, where success was measured not just in dollars, but in the quality of relationships and the impact we had on our clients' businesses. But success hadn't made me forget the lesson of that email termination. I made sure every employee had equity participation in the firm's growth, comprehensive benefits, and clear paths for advancement. Most importantly, I promised that no one would ever be dismissed via email. Difficult conversations would happen in person with respect and transparency. Jennifer had been promoted to partner after 18 months, becoming the youngest CPA in the city to achieve that level. Michael was heading our audit division and had brought in several major clients through his technical expertise and attention to detail. Carol had become our operations manager, overseeing everything from IT systems to human resources. Alex had proven himself capable of handling complex client relationships and was being groomed for senior associate responsibilities. The firm was becoming everything I'd hoped it could be, a place where talented professionals could build careers while providing exceptional service to clients who valued quality over cost. But it was also becoming something I hadn't expected, a model for how professional service firms could operate in the modern economy. We were invited to speak at several industry conferences about our approach to client service and employee development. Business schools were asking us to participate in case studies about entrepreneurship and firm management. Other professionals were visiting our offices to learn about our systems and culture. The recognition was gratifying, but what mattered most was the day-to-day reality of running a business that aligned with my values. I loved coming to work each morning, knowing that I'd be spending my time helping clients solve problems and achieve their goals. I enjoyed working with colleagues who shared my commitment to excellence and client service. I took pride in building something that would outlast my own career and provide opportunities for the next generation of accounting professionals. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if Richard had called me into his office that day instead of sending an email. If he'd explained the firm's financial pressures, asked for my help in finding solutions, treated me like a valued partner instead of an expensive liability, we might have found ways to cut costs without sacrificing client service. I might have accepted reduced compensation to help the firm through difficult times. But then I looked around my office, at the awards we'd won for client service excellence, at the team we'd built, at the impact we were having on our clients' businesses, and I realized that everything had happened exactly as it should. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. The final vindication came 18 months after I'd left Harrison & Associates, when Jennifer showed me an article in the Business Journal. Harrison had filed for bankruptcy, unable to recover from the client losses and reputation damage that had followed my departure. Richard was quoted in the article, acknowledging that personnel decisions had contributed to the firm's difficulties. I felt no satisfaction in their failure, only sadness that a firm with so much potential had been destroyed by poor leadership and short-sighted thinking. Several of Harrison's remaining employees had reached out to me about job opportunities, and I'd been able to help place most of them with other firms in the area. But the collapse of Harrison & Associates reinforced my conviction that business success ultimately comes down to treating people well, employees, clients, and partners alike. Richard had forgotten that lesson, and it had cost him everything he'd worked to build. As I sat in my office that evening, looking out at the city lights and thinking about the journey that had brought me here, I realized that getting fired had taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Loyalty is a two-way street. Relationships matter more than contracts, and sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards. Matthews Financial Services was no longer just my response to being fired. It was my legacy, proof that with the right combination of preparation, opportunity, and determination, anyone could build something meaningful and lasting. We were providing livelihoods for 15 families, serving over 100 clients, and contributing to the economic vitality of our community. The phone rang, interrupting my reflection. It was Tom Morrison, calling from his car as he drove home from a business dinner. "David, I've got some news I wanted to share with you. Morrison Industries is being acquired by a Fortune 500 company. The deal should close in about 6 months, and it's going to mean significant changes for our organization." My heart sank. Morrison Industries was still our largest client, and losing them would be a significant blow to our revenue. "Tom, congratulations on the acquisition. I'm sure it's a great opportunity for Morrison. What does this mean for our relationship? That's why I'm calling. The acquiring company has their own accounting firm, and they'll want to standardize all financial services across their organization. We'll need to transition to their preferred provider." I felt a familiar knot in my stomach, the same feeling I'd had when Richard fired me. But then Tom continued, "However, I've been talking to the acquisition team about our satisfaction with Matthews Financial Services. They're impressed with the work you've done for us, and they're interested in having you bid on handling some of their other subsidiaries' accounting needs." The knot in my stomach loosened. Really? What kind of scope are we talking about? Potentially 3 or 4 companies similar in size to Morrison. It could actually be a bigger opportunity than what we're currently doing together. I told them that if they want to see what exceptional client service looks like, they should talk to you. After hanging up with Tom, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. 2 years ago, I'd been devastated by the loss of job security and the relationships I'd thought were permanent. Now I was running a thriving business that was strong enough to weather the loss of even our largest client and potentially turn that loss into an even bigger opportunity. That's when I realized the most important lesson of all. True security doesn't come from having a job or even a single large client. It comes from building something of value, developing skills that others need, and creating relationships based on mutual respect and benefit. I picked up my phone and called Jessica. "Hey, want to go out for dinner? I've got some news to share and I think we should celebrate." Good news or bad news? Both, actually, but mostly good. I'll tell you all about it over dinner. As I gathered my things and prepared to leave the office, I took one last look around. The space was quiet now, but tomorrow it would be filled with the energy of people doing work they cared about, serving clients who valued their expertise, and building something that would last. Getting fired via email had been the worst professional moment of my life, but sitting here now, surrounded by the evidence of what I'd built in response to that moment, I couldn't imagine my life having taken any other path. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a much better one.